What's up, everybody? Today, I'm going to walk you through 4 real retirement plans I personally built to show you exactly what works and what doesn't, depending on your stage of life, your priorities, and your money. Because that question, how much do I need to retire, is one I hear every single day. But most of the answers are either way too general or just completely misleading. As a certified financial planner, I've seen people retire comfortably on just Social Security, and I've seen others with over $1 million saved run out of money. And it wasn't because of the stock market or bad luck. It was because of how they designed their retirement and their life. So this video is different. I'm not giving you theories or walking you through a financial calculator. Instead, I'll share 4 real-world retirement stories and case studies, and you can think of it as a choose-your-own retirement path. You'll see retirement through the lens of a couple who started saving late and feels behind, a couple trying to balance saving for retirement and paying for their children's college education, a couple set to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes in retirement, and a business owner who just sold their company. Feel free to skip around to whatever chapter fits your life or watch all 4. No matter where you are in your journey, I promise there's something here for you in each of these cases. Let's start with John, the late saver who feels behind. So meet John. He's 57, married to Sarah, who is 54 with grown kids. John makes $85,000 a year as an administrative director, while his wife, Sarah, recently started working at the front desk of a dental office after spending 2 decades as a stay-at-home mom raising their 3 kids, who are now 26, 24, and 21. Now, John and Sarah didn't do anything wrong that put them behind in saving for retirement. They've just prioritized their family and their kids, first paying for their sports, braces, college, and family vacations. John has always contributed the minimum to his 401k, but serious retirement planning always seemed like something they could address later. They both have a goal to retire at 65 and expect to have the same monthly expenses at $5,000 per month in retirement, which is adjusted for inflation at 3% every year throughout the plan. Now, with retirement on the horizon, John's 401k sits at $400,000. Sarah's is at $25,000 because, again, she started contributing late. And these retirement plans, we have invested in 70% stock to 30% fixed income portfolios, which are pretty standard and will get an average return of 6.5%. They also own their $450,000 home outright and have no debt. But the nagging question remains, is this enough? Now, the standard rule of thumb, I'm sure many of you have heard before, is to save enough to replace 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income. And this translates to saving 10 to 12 times your annual income, which for John and Sarah, that would mean they would need $1.2 million to $1.4 million saved up. Which, if we go to the retirement analysis, we find out John and Sarah are not on track to have this because they only have a 29% probability of success. So currently, it doesn't look good for John and Sarah at first glance, but let's see what they can do. What if they both delayed retirement for 2 years and time retirement when they start receiving Social Security at full retirement age? That increases their probability of success to 48%, but we're still not there yet. So let's look at this differently because rather than trying to hit a magic number, let's look at matching John and Sarah's resources with their ideal lifestyle in retirement. If we look at John and Sarah's assets again, their home represents their largest asset and also their greatest opportunity. While many advisors might immediately suggest downsizing, let's look at this more strategically. John and Sarah did mention considering a move to Ohio to be closer to their kids and grandchildren when they retire, so let's see what that would look like. By selling their home in Pennsylvania for $450,000 or more, because remember, that's just the value as of today, and they relocated to a smaller community in Ohio, they can purchase a comfortable home for around $275,000 or so and add $175,000 or more, depending on what it sells for, to their investment portfolio. And doing that would further increase their success rate to 61%, adding almost another $1 million to their plan. Now, keep in mind, they wouldn't pay any taxes on the sale of their home either, because there's an IRS rule that states if you meet certain conditions, you can exclude the first $500,000 of gain from the sale of your home if married filing jointly, and $250,000 if you're single. So this immediately changes their retirement situation. But the benefits go beyond the one-time cash infusion into their plan. Property taxes in their new location would be $2,700 a year versus $4,500 a year in Pennsylvania, saving them $1,800 per year. Lower utility costs save another $1,200 per year. And altogether, relocating reduces their annual expenses by about $3,000 while freeing up capital and allowing them to be closer to their family. And in some cases, maybe you downsize to an independent retirement community or just a smaller home. And oftentimes, if you compare the costs and the amount of upkeep you don't have to do yourself anymore, in most cases, it could be worth looking into. Now let's address John and Sarah's income strategy, starting with Social Security. Right now, both John and Sarah are claiming at full retirement age, which is 67 and several months, depending on their date of birth. But let's see what happens if they both considered holding off on claiming Social Security to age 70, because keep in mind, every year you delay taking Social Security, it grows by 8%. Not a bad annual return on your future income that is also inflation adjusted over time. Okay, let's see what this does. That moves the needle a little bit, and I would argue if this is even worth it or not, because depending on what John and Sarah want to do when they retire, they may prefer to just start collecting the cash flow so that they can start enjoying themselves rather than wait 3 more years to age 70, which again is completely fine too. My philosophy is if we can make the numbers work to allow you to start living your best life, let's do it. If you're healthy and your finances can support you, start doing the things that bring you joy. I've worked with many folks who spend their entire lives working their butts off and sacrificing their health only to then retire and not be healthy enough to enjoy it. So first, take care of yourself, make your health your number one priority, so when the time comes to retire, you can enjoy it to the fullest. Next for John and Sarah was talking about lifestyle design and their spending habits. As empty nesters, John and Sarah realized that many of their spending habits were tied to a lifestyle and identity that no longer served them. The premium cable package with channels they never watched, or the second car they rarely used, or the golf memberships they maintained out of habit. These weren't bringing them happiness anymore. So we implemented what I call value-based spending. Rather than cutting back across the board, we looked strategically at where their spending aligned with their core values at this point in their life. It was family, security, personal growth, and community. And so we redirected their resources accordingly. They traded in their older vehicle and just used one reliable car, saving on insurance, maintenance, and gas. They reviewed their subscription services and only kept the ones they used on a regular basis. They also discovered they preferred hosting family dinners with their grandchildren as opposed to going to expensive restaurants. A minor change, but when you have a bunch of kids and grandchildren, going out to eat ain't much fun anymore, and I could tell you that from having kids myself along with 6 nieces and nephews. It literally all just turns into fun chaos. Anyway, so these adjustments reduce their expenses by $1,100 a month without diminishing their quality of life because they aligned with what truly mattered to them. And the final thing we'll discuss for John and Sarah is adjusting their spending in retirement. Because right now, the software is assuming we are going to spend the same amount of money every single year adjusted for inflation. And in reality, it just doesn't work that way. There's a concept called the retirement spending smile, which states that at the beginning of retirement, you're healthy, you're excited, you might travel, pick up new hobbies, or spoil the grandkids, but you'll just spend more money. These are the go-go years. Then comes the middle of retirement. You've done maybe some big bucket list stuff. Maybe you're slowing down a little bit and staying closer to home, so your spending starts to drop. And finally, later in retirement, you may need more help. Maybe you need to hire a caregiver. Maybe you're going to pay for some home modifications or covering medical expenses. So spending tends to go up. And when you zoom out, you'll see spending isn't a straight line, it changes like a smile. So your financial plan needs to adjust with it. And if we make that change here, it dramatically increases the plan's probability of success to 71% and adds another 1.7 million to the plan. Knowing this helps you avoid running out of money and still enjoy yourself at every stage of retirement. So in the end, your retirement number isn't just always about accumulation. It's about aligning your resources with a life that truly matters to you. Next, we have Mike and Priya, who are struggling between saving for retirement and paying for their kids' college education. Priya is 48, married to Mike, who is 49, and they have 3 kids. They have several goals they want to achieve, including both retiring at age 55 and continuing to live on $6,000 a month, adjusted for inflation. They'd like to time their retirement right when their youngest child, Zach, graduates from college, and that's when their mortgage is projected to be paid off as well. Each child all plans to go to college in state, with Priya and Mike planning on paying for each of their college education, because that's what Priya's parents did for her, and she wants to do the same for her kids. Annual healthcare cost is estimated to be a little over $6,300 per year for each of them, and this is also adjusted for inflation at a rate of 5% in the plan. And then we have long-term care for the last 2 years of the plan, which is really important and something most of us should try to plan for, just because we don't know what the future holds. And finally, Priya and Mike want to travel each year in their first 10 years of retirement, because after that, they're hoping to have grandkids by then. And at that time, they will be most excited to splurge a lot of their money on them. So that's their goals. Priya makes $110,000 a year and Mike makes $90,000. So both have a healthy and very strong income. But despite their healthy incomes, retirement still feels so far away. And given with how much they want to do, it feels out of reach. And currently, if we look at their retirement projection, they're not on track to retire when they want to. Now, on paper, it looks like they should be in an excellent position, right? Combined 401k balances of $585,000, home equity of $344,000, and a healthy household income. But several factors are preventing them from making real progress. The biggest one being competing priorities. Putting 3 kids through college and paying for each of their $40,000 per year college tuition can add up very quickly. The second is lifestyle inflation. Their expenses have risen in lockstep as they've increased their income over the years. And just from having a family with 3 kids, things are going to add up. And third is lack of time. 60+ hour work weeks, running the kids around because they're in sports. All of this leaves no bandwidth for financial planning and getting financially organized on what changes they need to think about today to get themselves on track. And between all of these, it's left them with stress, uncertainty if they're going to be able to retire, and the nagging feeling that they should be further ahead. So the first thing we had to do was figure out paying for college. This was really important for Priya, but in order for them to have a chance at fully funding all 3 of their children's education, they would need to drastically cut expenses. Because their oldest, William, who is 18, he's going to college right now, with 2 years later, Jessica starts going, and then another 2 years, Zach goes. And so it wasn't a realistic scenario. Now, Priya and Mike have options. The first option was to work longer. They each can work 3 more years and retire at 58. If they did that, their situation improves. If they work until age 60, they'd be just fine. If we look at their withdrawal rate, they'd have a decent withdrawal rate in the early years, looks like around 5 to 6%, but after age 66, it drops all the way down to 1% and then 3 to 4%, because that's when RMDs start kicking in, which are required minimum distributions. And a healthy withdrawal rate should be around 4 to 5%. If Mike and Priya didn't want to work another 3 to 5 years, but still contribute to the kids' college education, maybe they pay for half of it, because you can always take out a loan for education. You cannot take out a loan for retirement. So let's assume they pay half of the annual tuition for each child at around $15,000 per year, and that certainly improves their situation. They're not quite there yet, but let's also assume they can each work one more year to age 56. Now that drastically changes their situation even more. So the point is, Mike and Priya have options on which dials they can turn up or down. The next piece was helping them with their cash flow. For professionals like Priya and Mike who don't have the time, complexity will be the biggest problem. So our first step was to simplify and automate a lot of their investments. So we did our best to set up a set it and direct it system and basically give everything a job. The second item was to increase and automate contributions. We set a goal to start contributing 10% into their 401ks and then increase it 1% per year for the next 5 years. Now, for most plans, you can just log into the 401k portal online and set this up to where the plan does it for you automatically. Currently, they were contributing 5%, which is great because that's what they picked when they originally set it up, but they never changed it. So we went into their 401k provider, we set this up, and now they don't need to worry about it. It'll do it automatically for them, and they can save more money. And finally, we automated cash flow sweeping. So any excess cash in their checking account was automatically redirected to their brokerage investment account. And you can easily set this up with your bank and linking the account to your custodian who holds your investments. Real easy to do. And the final thing we'll discuss for Priya and Mike is adjusting their spending in retirement. Because right now the software is assuming we are going to spend the same amount of money every single year adjusted for inflation. And I talked about this in the first case. And in reality, again, the spending, it doesn't work that way. There's a concept called the retirement spending smile, which I'll talk about again real quick right here. And all that states is that at the beginning of retirement, you're healthy, you're excited, you might travel, pick up new hobbies, or spoil the grandkids, but you'll just spend more money in those early years, and these are called the go-go years. Then comes the middle of retirement. Maybe you've done some of the big bucket list item stuff. Maybe you're slowing down a little bit, staying closer to home. So at this point in your life, your spending starts to drop. And finally, later in retirement, you may need more help. You might need to hire a caregiver, make home improvements, or cover medical expenses. And so spending at this point in your life, it goes back up again. And when you zoom out, you'll see spending isn't a straight line. It changes like a smile. So your financial plan needs to adjust with it. And if we make that change here, it dramatically increases the plan's probability of success to 80%. So Priya and Mike's retirement landscape had completely transformed, right? Their combined portfolio has grown to 1.2 million by retirement through increasing their contributions and consistently investing. Priya and Mike were very happy they were able to contribute to their kids' college education while also not having to work another 5 years. And they organized their finances where everything was automated and streamlined, significantly reducing her anxiety about retirement. Next, we have James and Karen, who have a ticking tax bomb they will be facing in retirement. They've just retired after successful careers in healthcare. On paper, they've done everything right. James has 1.2 million in his rollover IRA, while Karen has 900,000 in hers. Combined with their paid off home worth $550,000, they should be set for a comfortable retirement. But there's a ticking tax bomb in their financial plan that they don't even know about. Let's look at their situation. With combined tax deferred accounts of $2.1 million growing at even a conservative 5 to 6% per year, their required minimum distributions, or RMDs, at age 75 will start at approximately $143,000 between the both of them and grow to over $200,000 by age 81. Combined with their Social Security benefits, they'll start crossing into the 22% tax bracket around 81 to 82 years old. The issue isn't that they didn't save enough. It's that they saved too efficiently in tax-deferred accounts without creating tax diversification. Now they face a retirement where Uncle Sam becomes their biggest expense. The first piece of James and Karen's tax solution requires a counterintuitive approach, which is intentionally accelerating income and taxes in the short term to dramatically reduce them in the long term. This is called a Roth conversion, and the idea is prepay some of the taxes today at a lower rate so that in the future you don't have to pay at a higher rate. Here's how the strategy is implemented. We strategically move money from our traditional IRA to a Roth IRA during these lower income years. This is the tax sweet spot, the years between retirement and age 75 when RMDs begin. Now, during this period, their income consists primarily of just Social Security, putting them in a lower tax bracket than they'll face once RMDs kick in. So what if we converted in these lower income years up to the 12 to 15% tax bracket? Let's see what that would do. Okay, we see the green filling this section in by doing the Roth conversions, adding over $100,000 more in tax-adjusted assets to our plan. And keep this in mind, this is a general example. You don't have to convert every single one of these years. You could be more strategic and pick whatever amount makes sense for your situation. And also keep in mind, this may look good saving $100,000 in taxes, but there's a hidden tax trap that may come up. You want to make sure you compare the impact and how it affects your Medicare premiums, also known as IRMA charges. Sometimes if you convert too much, you can increase your Medicare premiums by over $200 to $300 a month. So just make sure you keep that into consideration when looking at Roth conversions. There needs to be a calculated balance between the two. Now, by the time James and Karen reach age 75, they will have converted over $400,000 to Roth accounts, significantly reducing their RMDs and creating a tax-free source of retirement income. The second component of James and Karen's tax plan leverages their core values and supporting their grandchildren's education and the charitable causes they care about. So if you're charitably inclined, you can implement this three-pronged approach. First, there's qualified charitable distributions or QCDs. Once James and Karen reach 70 and a half, they can direct up to $100,000 per year from their IRAs directly to a qualified charity, which will satisfy the RMD requirements without increasing their taxable income. So if you don't need the income from your IRA, which is a great spot to be in, this would be a great way to give back while satisfying your RMD and paying $0 in taxes. Second, there is a donor advised fund. James and Karen didn't use this, but if you have highly appreciated stock in a taxable brokerage account, moving it into a donor advised fund can provide an immediate tax deduction while eliminating capital gains tax on assets that you could have been holding for over 20 years. Third is a charitable bunching strategy for funding college education. So James and Karen can also send direct tuition payments for their grandchildren. So they can make payments directly to educational institutions. That doesn't count against the annual gift tax exclusion. They can contribute up to $19,000 per grandchild to 529 plans per year, or they can just make the payment directly to the university each year as well. So pretty cool if you want to make a real impact with your money and see it as opposed to leaving a bunch of money behind when you pass away and see it from the grave per se. So after doing all of these things, James and Karen's retirement tax picture has completely transformed. They've converted $400,000 to Roth IRAs, paying taxes at 12% and 15% rates. They projected their RMDs at age 75. They've drastically decreased. They've funded their grandchildren's 529 plans, and their projected lifetime tax savings easily exceeds over $100,000 to $150,000. But most importantly, they've aligned their financial strategies with their core values, transforming tax planning from a burden into an expression of what matters most to them. And finally, we have Mike, who sold his business to retire. After 32 years of building his HVAC company from a van to a thriving business with 24 employees, he sold for $2 million net after taxes at age 60. Now, Mike did everything right too. He built a valuable company and exited with a substantial nest egg, but he was very anxious about investing. On paper, everyone would love to be in Mike's situation. $2 million from the business sale, a paid-off home worth $650,000, and $350,000 in retirement accounts. But numbers don't tell the whole story. Mike had always defined himself through his business. Without it, he felt he had no purpose. He obsessed over the stock market, checking his portfolio multiple times a day, and he became anxious about spending and investing. Turns out for Mike, this money filled him with more anxiety than his business ever did. His business was something that he was hugely proud of, both in terms of its success and the team that he built. And only now, looking back, did he realize how much that meant to him. What's more is that although he was wealthy on paper, that money was tied up in his business, in something tangible, with risks that he understood and could control. But now all of that has been replaced by a big pile of cash, which sounds great, but he's never had this much money before. This is the result of his life's work, and he expressed being paralyzed by the fear that he was going to lose it. So he needed help getting this money invested and figuring out whether he had enough to live the lifestyle that he's been looking forward to. For the investments, Mike initially wanted to be extremely conservative. I don't want to lose a penny of what I worked so hard to build, he told me. But this approach created a problem. With inflation and his withdrawal needs, not investing his portfolio would guarantee his money wouldn't last through retirement. So how should we actually invest that $2 million from the business sale? What we did was create a purpose-first investment strategy that was aligned with Mike's specific freedom number. Now, your freedom number is the return you need to hit your goals without taking unnecessary risks. So it's answering the question, what's the minimum return I need to reach my goals with confidence? And in the end, it's all about balance, right? We can't take zero risk and do nothing. And on the other side, we can't just shove it all into the stock market, right? Technically, you could do that, but with this amount of money, you'd end up chasing unnecessary returns, which exposes you to unnecessary risks. And in retirement, unlike in your business, you don't have the time or income generating capacity to recover from major mistakes. So investing that $2 million would typically look something like this. And it's using a bucket strategy. First is the stable bucket, where we establish 3 to 5 years of your income needs in stable investments that you're easily able to access. This might be things like laddered CDs, treasury bonds, high quality short-term bonds. And the purpose of this bucket is to make sure you won't be forced to sell assets in a down market. If the market takes a huge drop, you'll draw from this bucket instead of selling assets invested in the stock market. Next is the balanced bucket. This will consist of 3 to 10 years of balanced investments with a purpose to invest moderately and provide growth while maintaining some stability. This would be a portfolio designed to provide both growth and income through dividend-paying stocks, REITs, and intermediate-term bonds as an example, and it replenishes your stable bucket over time. Then there's the growth bucket, which will have growth investments meant to stay invested for 10 plus years. Its main purpose will be to invest aggressively since the funds won't be needed for at least 10 plus years. So this portion usually consists of a diversified portfolio in all stock positions like small cap, mid cap, and large cap stocks, international stocks, and some other assets with higher growth potential. Now, the exact allocation between each of these buckets and how much you put into each depends entirely on your freedom number and your comfort level with risk. Someone who needs a 4% return might have 40% in the stable bucket, while someone needing 6% might only allocate 20% in the stable bucket. This purpose-driven approach, though, is very different from how most people invest and certainly different from how you manage your capital in your business. When we implement this strategy with business owners, 3 things typically happen. First, their anxiety dramatically decreases because we now have a clear plan and understand exactly how our money is working, which provides incredible peace of mind. Second, they often discover they can spend more than they thought on the things that truly matter to them, while spending less on things that don't add to what makes them happy. And third, they develop a healthier relationship with the market, meaning when they see a market downturn, it doesn't threaten their financial security or make them worry anymore. It becomes much easier to stay the course rather than making spur-of-the-moment emotional decisions. Because another common investment mistake I see with business owners is trying to replicate your business returns in your investment portfolio. Your business likely generated 15, 20%, or even higher returns on invested capital, right? That's what's great about owning a successful private business. You take all the risk and you have the potential to make a huge return. High risk, high return, high involvement, right? But your retirement portfolio has a completely different purpose. It's not about maximizing returns anymore. It's about maximizing the probability that you'll have the income you need when you need it for as long as you live. So for Mike, we structured his investments into the 3 buckets. For the stability bucket, we took 4 years of his expenses at $7,000 a month, which gives us $336,000, and put it in short-term bonds and high-yield money market accounts, keeping everything very safe. For his balanced bucket, we took 60% of his portfolio, so $1.2 million, and invested it in a diversified, balanced portfolio with dividend stocks with a goal to get a modest, stable return. So this would look like a 50% bond, 50% stock portfolio. And finally, for his growth bucket, we took the remaining $400,000 or so and invested in stock growth investments diversified throughout large cap, mid cap, and small cap equity positions. Now, what helped Mike was that he needed to stop seeing his portfolio as a scoreboard and start viewing it as a tool for allowing him to live his best life. This approach gave Mike both the security he needed psychologically and the growth required to sustain his lifestyle. So we had to address his spending next. And I talked about the retirement spending smile in the other cases, but I'll explain it again here if you didn't watch those yet. There's a concept called the retirement spending smile, which states that at the beginning of retirement, you're healthy and excited, you might travel, pick up new hobbies, or spoil your grandkids, but you'll just spend more money. And these are called the go-go years. Then comes the middle of retirement. Maybe you've done some big bucket list items. Maybe you're slowing down a bit and so your spending starts to drop. And finally, later in retirement, you may need more help. Maybe you're hiring a caregiver, paying for home adjustments, or covering more medical expenses. So spending goes back up again. And when you zoom out, you'll see spending isn't a straight line. It changes like a smile. So your financial plan needs to adjust with it. And if we make that change here, it dramatically increases the plan's probability of success to 82%, adding an additional $1.4 million to the plan, all from adjusting your spending. Now, even with that said, and despite having more than enough resources, Mike still hesitated to spend on things that would improve his quality of life. I introduced Mike to a framework that helped him align his spending with his values. First, there's the essential expenses, which covers housing, food, utilities, and healthcare, all the basic stuff that we need. Then there's the relationship investments, which are experiences and activities that strengthen important relationships in your life. Next, there's personal growth. So that's investing in education, skill development, or improving your health. And then there's legacy and impact. And this would be charitable giving, family support, or just contributing to your community. And finally, there's comfort and convenience, which are simply quality of life enhancements. This framework helped Mike prioritize spending that brought genuine fulfillment rather than just accumulating more wealth he was afraid to use. For example, Mike had always talked about taking his grandchildren to Universal Studios, but kept delaying it because it was so expensive. And after implementing this framework, he recognized this fell under relationship investments and finally booked the trip, which became one of his most cherished memories. And the final piece of Mike's retirement was the hardest, and that was finding purpose beyond his business. Most business owners struggle with this transition going from owner to retiree because their identity has been so deeply intertwined with their company. So to help Mike overcome this, we started mapping out what he enjoyed doing. We identified the elements of his work that had truly given him energy, which was mentoring younger technicians, solving complex technical problems, being recognized as an expert in his field, and contributing to his community. All of these are what was most important to him. With these patterns identified, Mike could find activities that provided similar fulfillment. He began mentoring through SCORE and local chambers of commerce, helping new business owners navigate challenges he'd already overcome. He began teaching HVAC courses at the local community college 2 evenings a week, and he also considered writing a practical guide for HVAC business owners based on his experiences because he really enjoyed giving back to his industry. 2 years after selling his business, Mike's retirement looked nothing like he initially thought it would be. He had a sustainable $7,000 monthly income from his investments. He found his purpose through teaching, mentoring, and giving back. He had a clear spending framework that aligned with his values. He found time freedom to travel with Liz and the satisfaction of seeing his legacy continue through the students he mentored became really important to him. I found business owners who sell and transition into retirement need more than just financial planning. They actually need identity planning. And so my point is, if you're a business owner, the greatest threat to your retirement isn't necessarily running out of money, it's running out of purpose. So we've explored 4 very different paths to retirement. All 4 discovered that retirement planning is fundamentally about life design and not just the math and the numbers. The most sophisticated financial strategies will fail without alignment to your authentic values and priorities. Second, each person found that conventional retirement rules are just starting points and not set it in stone, right? The 4% rule, the 80% income replacement target, the retirement age of 65, these are all guidelines that can be changed to meet your unique situation. Third, all 4 recognized that retirement itself is evolving, right? It changes. The binary model of work, then don't work is giving way to more flexible approaches that blend purpose, identity, and financial independence. So whatever path you choose, start by answering these 3 questions. First, what am I retiring from? What aspects of your current life do you want to leave behind? Second, what am I retiring to? So what purpose, activities, and identity will fill your time? And third, what resources do I truly need to bridge that gap? Now, only after answering the first 2 questions can you determine your freedom number. Remember, the goal isn't just to retire, it's to build a life you don't want to retire from. Now, I know some of you watching might be thinking, this is all great information, Tom, but I feel like I'm starting from zero. I'm 45 or 50 and I haven't begun saving for retirement yet. So if that's you, I want you to know it's not too late. In this video, I give my top recommendations for how to catch up on saving for retirement when you're starting from scratch in your 40s, 50s, or even later than that. So click the video and I'll see you right over there.